So that is the big fear right now, that inflation could return because oil prices have spiked.
We are seeing a lot here in the world. Welcome back to Muslim Loose. My name's David. Today we have markets starting to crash in certain countries. We have the conflict escalating in Iran. We have Mark Carney having his hand forced on selling oil. He wants his low-carbon eco-utopia. Will he be able to keep leaning on that? The Pathways Project. Well, countries are demanding to buy our oil. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got Prime Minister Mark Carney speaks with President Donald J. Trump. So this was just yesterday that this happened. It says here, Prime Minister had a conversation with Donald Trump in the afternoon, range of issues, including the economy, developments in the Middle East, trade relations between the two countries. They agreed to remain in close contact. This is nothing. Carney is doing a whole lot of nothing. He's supposed to get a deal in July, and well, that didn't happen. We've also got this one here. Mark Carney's announcing 3 by-elections, all on April 13th, 2026. Scarborough Southwest, Terrebonne, and University Rosedale. Chrystia Freeland's riding. This is interesting because it shows Mark Carney wants to test the waters here. I mean, the polling data shows that Carney's in the lead. Most of the pollsters lean liberal, but these by-elections will tell us exactly where things lie. One thing for certain, we know the gas prices are starting to go up. This is coming out of, I believe, Greater Vancouver. Yeah, we got White Rock, Surrey, $2.08. This is going to get blamed on Mark Carney, and this is something in the case where it's actually not his fault. This is obviously from the conflict in the Middle East, but it doesn't matter. This is the one time where world events will just get blamed on Carney, because this will just inherently increase the price of food, increase the price of transportation of goods, like anything really. Anything that goes on a truck, this is going to cost more. We got $2.21 downtown Victoria for diesel. Now really, Mark Carney could fight back against this. He could immediately remove the industrial carbon tax and cut the taxes off of our gas, so it'd be a lot cheaper, as well as provinces. They could cut their taxes off our gas and bring this down immediately, like 30-40 cents, if they cared about Canadian citizens. But obviously they're not going to do that. We also have "O Canada" being sung at a Calgary Flames game, and can you spot the difference here?
And now to perform "O Canada" in Blackfoot, please welcome from the Siksika Nation, Delana Black Force.
O Canada, gidawa senoni, go se getsani.
Why? Why is this being sung like this? Sing it how it's supposed to be sung, in English. They want to sing it on First Nation bands or at First Nation arenas. By all means, sing it like that. Moving ahead, we've got federal Liberal government has proposed a debate on the Iran war, House leader says. So this will be happening today, I believe today. We've got a breakdown here of the world's largest oil supply shocks in history. What do we have? Strait of Hormuz closure right now, 20 million barrels per day. The Iranian Revolution was only 5.5 million per day. The Yom Kippur War, only 4.5 billion barrels per day. As you see, 4.34 and 2 billion barrels per day for these different conflicts. This is how significant this is. And meanwhile, what is the CBC putting out? As Carney seeks strength in global alliances, is it time for Canada to join the EU? This is complete nonsense. We're nowhere near the EU. Why would we join the EU? Because Carney can roll out his net zero agenda. We can bring in their CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Program, to further tax Canadians into oblivion. Our country's being run by a cartel. Meanwhile, we've got Juno News coming out with this. Exclusive. Taiwan asks Canada to export oil, calls it a national security issue. Taiwan's foreign minister pleads for Canadian energy to help the island democracy against the increasingly aggressive communist China. There's so many cases now. India was begging us for their oil. China said they would buy more of our oil. Taiwan wants more of our oil. What's Mark Carney going to do? I think Pierre Poilievre needs to stack all of these up. He just did his trip over in Germany. He was filming in front of LNG and oil facilities, showing basically the hub where all that stuff gets brought and then shipped out around Europe. It's time to double down and push on this, that Carney needs to immediately fast track a pipeline without his net zero agenda. No Pathways Project, forget that nonsense, start building right now, because we need to be exporting oil. If we had another pipeline in place, that thing would be maxed out. I think this is a hinge issue that can expose Carney's grift, that he's not doing it for us. He doesn't want this pipeline for Canadians. He wants the net zero agenda for himself. This is an easy way to expose it, because what's he going to do? He'd say, well, no, let's not do that until we get Pathways. And then Canadians will be like, what? Why? Why do we have to pull carbon out of the air and inject it 2 kilometers into the ground so we can export our oil? It doesn't make any sense. We also got this. Just in, closure of the Strait of Hormuz has triggered the worst global energy crisis since 1970. Wall Street Journal reports. There's worries that the stock market will be absolutely plummeting today. We've got this post that summed it up brilliantly. We've got the US who starts the war with Iran. Trump says it could last 5 weeks. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil is blocked. Oil is surging past $90 a barrel, heading to $120, maybe $150. When oil goes up, everything goes up. Gas, food, shipping, as I mentioned. Anything that gets put on a truck, on a boat, anything, it goes up. Inflation returns central banks can't cut rates. They might even raise them. And we saw this there's a report from someone from the Bank of Canada, I believe, said that they may have to raise the rates. Higher rates equals higher mortgage rates, 7%, 8%. We had Ron Butler, the mortgage guy, came out and said the exact same thing. When you have conflicts like this, oil going up, mortgage rates will go up. As it says, higher mortgage rates, people can't afford to make the payments. Forced to sell, floods the market. This is mostly people with variable mortgages because it fluctuates. If you lock in for 5 or 10 years, then, well, you know what your payment's going to be. But a lot of people sit on a variable and then kaboom, gets too expensive. You have to sell your property, floods the market crashes. It says here, $4 trillion has already been wiped out on global stock markets in 4 days. People are losing their down payments in the market crash. South Korea's market has just crashed 8% and triggered a circuit breaker. Japan down minus 6%. The Dow is minus 1,200 points. And just to show you here, we've got South Korea. Here's their market crashing 8.11%. Plummeting, it's off screen here. When stocks crash, layoffs follow, tech, finance, real estate, construction. Laid off people with 7% mortgages they can barely afford, they sell. Yeah, when you have that high of interest rates, it's time to sell. This floods the market, the prices come down, as mentioned, and housing inventory surges. The prices drop 20-30%. We're seeing that in Toronto right now. There's these huge floods of houses being put on the market, but they're these houses that nobody wants to really live in. They're ones that builders were building for investors, and now investors can't make those payments, and it's flooded the market. It's the wrong kind of housing. We've already seen a drop of like 20-30% in Toronto, and once these big markets come down, then it starts filtering across and spreading like wildfire on all the other markets, smaller towns and cities around these major centers like Toronto and Vancouver. This guy goes on to say here, if you have cash, sit on it. The biggest buying opportunity of your lifetime is 12 to 24 months away. If you just signed a mortgage on top of that, I'm sorry. This isn't fear. This is math. Bookmark this, come back in 18 months. So I agree with this post here. This is well written. Something else that plays into all of this is that Israel struck Iran's oil refineries. And now we're seeing this kind of mess where it's just the skies filled up with smoke. And not only that, we've got oil leaking into the sewer systems. And well, it caught on fire. Look at this. We have outrageous scenes from Taiwan where oil that's on fire in the sewers is lighting up the streets. This is insane. And meanwhile, what's Donald Trump doing? Over the weekend here, Trump convenes the Shield of Americas summit with 12 Latin American leaders. In Miami, President calls for regional cooperation to counter Chinese economic and political interests. He brought in all these leaders from Latin America to counter Chinese interference in the Americas.
And some of you are in danger. I mean, you're actually in danger. It's hard to believe. But we're working with you to do whatever we have to do. We'll use missiles. If you want us to use a missile, they're extremely accurate. Boom, right into the living room. And that's the end of that cartel person.
He's not joking. They're going to use missiles if they ask them to. Meanwhile, in Canada, food prices are off the charts, and now this war in Iran is further just going to increase that. Are Canadians going to keep going elbows up, or are they going to wake up and realize that Mark Carney could fix a lot of these problems today by getting rid of an industrial carbon tax, cutting taxes off of gas, cutting income tax? What are people going to do?
I mean, we're already starting to see the short-term effects, gas prices starting to rise. If this drags on, though, what are we looking at for medium and long-term impact?
Yeah, unfortunately, what this is going to mean is that we're going to see a lot of prices start to rise. So there's usually, each time the oil price goes up, a small filter through to things like grocery prices. Of course, we've been dealing with that challenge for several years now, post-pandemic. But this is just going to add further pressure to grocery prices. We've already seen gasoline prices jump in the past week. For each $10 increase in the price of a barrel of oil, you see about a 7 to 8 cent per liter increase in the price of gasoline. So that's already hitting families all across the country.
And with this, if it does continue, what role could Canada play in this, in supplying oil? Can we up our production?
I mean, there is some ability for us to be able to do that, particularly if we're going to export a little bit more to Asia. The Trans Mountain Pipeline is not at full capacity yet, but it will become very quickly at full capacity if we try to fill some of the Asian demand that's not now being met because the Strait of Hormuz is closed. So Canada does have an ability to put some additional oil onto the world market, but we can't hope to satisfy all of the lost production from the Middle East right now.
And with it, I mean, it's 20% that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Could we see rationing, or could we see actual shortfalls here?
I mean, in Canada, that's unlikely to occur. in both oil and also in natural gas. But in particularly East Asian countries that depend heavily on oil from the Middle East, they're going to be in significantly more challenging position over the coming months if the war does not resolve quickly.
And then I guess longer term, could we see Canada become somebody that countries want to turn to for a stable source of energy?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen that over this past year. So, I mean, the Prime Minister has made a lot of foreign trips, just recently came back from a tour out in South Asia and East Asia, signing deals on energy.
He's not signing deals. MOUs, phony, baloney nonsense. Their only deals that are really being done are Brookfield deals. The rest of them are just all for show.
Partnerships. So we saw the Prime Minister out in China in January, and then most recently now in India and in Japan, looking at possibilities for increased energy exports. I mean, that is something that Canada can offer to the world. Again, the challenge is that we don't have the pipeline capacity right now going over the Rockies to really become a large exporter to the Asian markets. We also only have one liquefied natural gas plant on the West Coast. We would need to build a second one, although that has been part of the government's plan. If you look at what the Special Projects Office has been trying to work on since it was set up last year.
That stuff has been in the works long before Mark Carney's Special Projects Office. I wish they'd be more honest on here.
So we would have quite a ways to go. It would take several more years to build out the infrastructure we need to be able to supply the Asian markets properly. But if it's something that we wanted to pursue, the demand is there.
Why wouldn't we want to pursue this? Like, this is ridiculous. Can't these people speak with conviction and courage? Does he not believe this as an economist? We should be doubling the amount of oil flowing through TMX or another pipeline parallel to it. Should we not have one to Prince Rupert? Like, it's preposterous that they talk about this like, oh, maybe we should, increase it a little bit. We've got 3 major countries that all want to buy up our oil just off the West Coast alone. Like, come on.
And there's one last quick, I don't think it's a quick question necessarily. Could we be pushed into a recession if the gas is still not flowing through the strait?
Yeah, so that is a good question. I mean, the fear right now is that, what could happen if we don't get that oil production back from the Middle East, that oil prices will remain higher. This will kick off inflation, and this will lead central banks in Canada, the United States, European Union, elsewhere in the world to raise interest rates in order to control inflation. And of course, that's going to have a negative effect on the economy, both here domestically as well as around the world. So that is the big fear right now, that inflation could return because oil prices have spiked. And if it does, higher interest rates, we could potentially see a recession globally.
Okay, Colin, thank you very much for...
Yeah, Mark Carney's going to keep the industrial carbon tax on just to further punish Canadians. There's not enough courage on CTV here to actually say that. We also got this. Trump says he's deploying Marco Rubio to Cuba after the country says they're going to fail. Perhaps Cuba wants to make a deal now because they've had an oil embargo on them ever since Trump took out Maduro, basically took control of Venezuela. That oil isn't flowing to Cuba anymore, so they're running out of energy.
He's using it in his second. And then he quickly turned to Cuba. He said, without being asked, Cuba is going to fall pretty soon, by the way, but Cuba is going to fall. They want to make a deal so badly. And I asked, how so? He said, they want to make a deal, so I'm going to put Marco over there, and we'll see how that works. But we're really focused on this one now, meaning Iran. We've got plenty of time on Cuba. Just more quickly, he's using it.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Meanwhile, we've got Carney signing deals with Xi Jinping in China. It's coming from Sam Cooper's The Bureau. Former senior Mountie, Carney's RCMP Chinese police cooperation deal is a counterintelligence danger that risks sovereignty. Canadian police tradecraft is valuable to state that blends criminal intelligence and political objectives seamlessly. This is dangerous what Carney's done there. They still don't want to tell us what this integration with Chinese police and our RCMP is. Why is Canada getting into bed with China and having closer collaboration with the Chinese police force and the RCMP? This makes no sense whatsoever. Not unless you think about it from the lens of Mark Carney getting support from Xi Jinping during the election, then the picture becomes a lot clearer. Something else we've been seeing in the news here pretty recently, well, more specifically on CBC, after Carney's deal with China, CBC is allowed to have journalists over there, and that's what they've done. They've parked one over there covering stuff going on in China. It's just turned into basically propaganda for the CCP.
China's achievements in electric vehicles, renewables, and robotics didn't happen by accident. They came about because of events like this and because the world's second largest economy focused the efforts of 1.4 billion people. Legislators will essentially rubber stamp President Xi Jinping's blueprint, and Delegate Nick Chan told us he believes China's on the right track.
It's a huge market. And we're buying a lot from Canada, and we love to work closer together. And you see a recent flooring of previous maybe slower relationship, but now it's a great time.
The war against Iran, though, has already sent oil prices soaring, and China uses a lot of it, meaning geopolitical risks remain a huge source of concern, says this analyst.
That worries me, of course. It's going to greatly disrupt the world, disrupt the trade picture for the whole world.
President Xi's blueprint again contained a vow to reunify democratic Taiwan, which China sees as a breakaway province.
I wonder if Trump had some intel whether that Xi Jinping was going to do that soon. So instead, he just went and took care of business in Iran, which needed to be done. And now Xi Jinping is too weak to go try to take Taiwan.
Also includes a 7% hike in defense spending to modernize China's military. Chris Brown, CBC News.
This is just propaganda from Chris Brown, CBC News. There's another one I saw. It's the same sort of thing. It always paints China in a good light. They're a big economy, this, that, and the other. We don't even know if they really have 1.4 billion people. That number comes from them telling us. But can that be trusted? I've seen reports where it says they only have 500 million people. Who knows? Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. By saying it's 1.4 billion, though, it gives them more leverage as a bigger economy, more people, a better partner to trade with. And knowing China, they'll lie, cheat, and steal, do anything to get more power, more money, more influence.